Morning, Boker Tov, everyone. Yesterday we read Parashat Terumah. Let's begin Parashat Terumah. Parashat Terumah is the beginning of the fundraising and the construction of the Mishkan. When we were in the desert, we're given the mitzvah, the commandment, to build a portable tabernacle or a portable sanctuary, a portable temple that we'd be using in the desert. And then we would be using it in the land of Israel for a time period until we settle and David HaMelech purchases and gets the deals for Yerushalayim, and then ultimately Shlomo HaMelech builds the Bet HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. But up until that point, we have this portable temple. So there's so much to discuss. A few important messages we'll go through about the timeline of the Torah. So let's begin. First, the Torah tells us that they began collecting the fundraising. So Hashem says, speak to the Jewish people, and they should take for me donations. They should take donations. Whoever wants to give can give. We spoke about a few weeks ago, we had a Parashat Shkalim, or we're going to have that again in Parashat Kitisa coming up, where everyone had to give, in Shekalim, everyone had to give half a coin. Someone who's rich couldn't give more, someone who was poor couldn't give less. It was a fixed amount. Here, it's not a fixed amount. It says, however much anyone wants to give, they started collecting for the Mishkan. The Mishkan had tons of precious metals, had tons of precious stones, precious different dyes and different types of wool. So the Torah lists all different types of oil. The Torah lists everything that they needed. They had like a menu of items that they needed to have donated. So the Torah tells us everything that they needed. And then there's this famous line, make a temple for me, a sanctuary for me, so that I can dwell amongst them. This is some very famously quoted pasuk when we speak about this parasha, because there's Chazal tell us something very important here. It tells us that Hashem tells Am Yisrael, make a mikdash for me, like a Bet HaMikdash, a sanctuary for me, v'shachanti, so that I can dwell betocham, amongst them. It doesn't say betocho, it doesn't say that so I could dwell in it, but it says that I could dwell in them, I could dwell amongst them. In other words, the purpose of the Bet HaMikdash, or the Mishkan, the Mikdash, is not so that God could dwell in the Mikdash, it's so that God could be part of the lives of Am Yisrael. And something that's very important that Rashi points out to us, that the Sforno speaks about, many commentators explain, is that the Torah here, if we're going in order, we are learning about the fundraising of the Mishkan in this week's parasha, and the instruction of the building of the Mishkan is in this week's parasha. Then next week is Parashat Tetzaveh, which continues about all of the clothing that the Kohen Gadol will have to wear, and the spices and all of the offerings that they have to bring in the Bet HaMikdash, in the Mishkan. Then we get to Parashat Kitisa. So 2 weeks later, Parashat Kitisa informs us about the sin of the golden calf, the Chet HaEgel. The golden calf was when after we heard the Ten Commandments, after we had our Ma'amad Har Sinai, the experience at Har Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to a mountain to receive more of the Torah from Hashem, and he comes back and he sees that they are serving a god, a golden cow that they had created themselves, a statue, and they say, quote, this is your God that brought you out of Egypt. It's fascinating, and it's perplexing. How is it possible that the Jewish people who experienced so much miracles in Egypt, and they saw all of the makot, all of the plagues that had befallen the Egyptians, and the Jewish people went from the lowest to being a free nation, and the Egyptians went from being the highest to being non-existent because of their persecution of Am Yisrael. And then a few months later, they're serving a golden cow, and they're saying this God is what took us out of Egypt. So this is where the Sforno says something amazing. Really, Rashi tells us that the construction of the Mishkan happened after the Chet HaEgel. Even though here we're reading it in Parashat Terumah 2 parashiyot before the sin of the golden calf, Rashi tells us that actually it happened in the opposite order, because the luchot were broken by Moshe Rabbeinu on the 17th of Tammuz, And he explains to us that we start building the Mishkan on the day after Yom Kippur, which is months later. Because after the 17th of Tammuz, Moshe went and asked for forgiveness. He went up to the mountain again, and then he went up for a second time. And on Yom Kippur, Hashem said, Tzalachti kidvarecha, I forgive them for what they did. And then they began building the Mishkan and collecting them for the Mishkan, everything the next day after Yom Kippur. So Rashi explains that the Torah is not in order here, which is something that's very common. In Mukdam Me'uchar b'Torah, the Torah is not necessarily in chronological order. But you still have to explain, well, then why is it out of order? There could be reasons for it, but here is a very important lesson. So the Sforno explains to us what's happening. The Sforno explains that initially we read Parashat Terumah, B'chol makom asher azkir et shemi avo alecha uberachticha. Wherever Am Yisrael decides to bring an offering, wherever the Jewish people are, it's okay. It could be brought anywhere. It doesn't have to be a centralized temple. It could be bringing a sacrifice wherever you want. However, the risk that you run with that is our connection and our relationship with Hashem is a non-physical thing. Hashem is non-physical. We don't see God. So if we had the ability to serve God wherever and whenever we wanted, which is a non-physical thing, the human mind has a very hard time comprehending a non-physical thing and having a relationship with a non-physical God. God is non-physical. It's very difficult for our mind in this physical world to have a relationship with God that's non-physical. And so what we did was we created a physical God for ourselves, that golden calf. It's not so surprising and perplexing that we would fall to doing that, because it's very difficult for us to have a strong relationship with Hashem that's non-physical. So what happened was, as a result of that, we created a golden calf and said, this will be our intermediary between us and God. That's avodah zarah. That's a terrible sin. But it's understandable that we need something physical. And as a result of us sinning with the golden calf, Hashem said, okay, go ahead and build a Mishkan. Now you'll have a Mishkan. Now you have a centralized place. And this will be dedicated my home. This is where you're going to come serve me. You can come pray to me here. The services will be here. So now we have a physical place of a home of Hashem. Really, Hashem is everywhere. But this is our way of building a relationship with Hashem using something tangible. It's tremendous. What's tremendous here is that ideally we wouldn't even need a Mishkan. We wouldn't even need a sanctuary. We could serve God wherever we want. But as humans in this world, we need to have something physical, to have something to hold on to. And so that's why we have the Mishkan. Now, why did it have to happen this way? For us to understand the importance of having a Mishkan is that it's necessary for it to be a bridge between us and Hashem. Chas v'shalom. Not that you're serving the walls, you're not serving the walls, you're not serving anything physical, but the physical place is helpful for us to have a connection with the non-physical God. So it's very, very nuanced. It's a very nuanced point. There is no physical, God is non-physical, but we use the physical things to help us to orient our minds. And that's what Hashem says, Asulu mikdash, make the Beit Mikdash, v'shachanti b'tocham, so that I could be amongst Am Yisrael, so that we could have a relationship. Okay, let's go. One thing that's very nice at the very beginning of the parasha, when it says to collect the Trumot, it says, Daber el bnei Yisrael veikuli terumah. They should take for me donations. Commentators ask, why does it say take donations? It should say give donations. And the answer is given that when one is giving a donation, really they are taking as well, because they will be receiving benefit by giving. When someone gives a donation to an important cause, to help something like the home of Hashem, or to do something like with charity causes, good causes, when someone is giving, they're not just giving, but they're also taking. That's why the verb used for collecting Trumot is to give Terumah. The simple answer is that, okay, you will give it to Moshe, and Moshe will then, you'll have people who are collecting the contributions. There will be some taking going on, right? You're going to have people that are taking it. That's a simple understanding. But the lesson that our sages teach us is that when you're giving, you're actually receiving. Okay. We then learn about the Aron, the ark. So there is let me see if I could find it. Okay, let me share a screen. What is this? I'm going to try to share the screen. Let's see how successful I am. Share screen here. Okay. I need someone to just give me like a thumbs up. Are you able to see the arc on the screen? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Some reaction. Are you able to see the Aron? Okay, very good. We got a bunch of thumbs up. Very good. So let me close this. So here, what we have is this is what the Aron looks like. The Torah describes this Aron, that we have to create a box. This is a box here. It's a very large box, and on the outside is golden, and on the inside is a wooden frame, and on the inside of the wooden frame is again gold. Both inside and outside of this wooden box is going to be gold. Then on top of the gold, you have this like crown going around it, and then above it, you have these two golden cherubs, these keruvim, which are in the shape of angels, and they have angel wings. You can see here on the right, it shows there are these extended poles. These poles are very long. Like from this image over here on the left, you can't tell how long it is, but there's actually they're very long. Chachamim explained to us this is the Kohen Gadol doing his service in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, a question that I have about this Aron. So this Aron, it's a wooden box, and this wooden box is covered with gold on the inside and outside. So sages ask, on the outside, I understand why you want to have gold, because it's a beautiful, it's very beautiful, it's very pleasing to the eyes, and really the entire Mishkan is covered with ornaments and beautiful metals and precious, colorful tapestries and curtains. It's supposed to be a beautiful place to inspire us. Now, the outside is gold, fine, but what about the inside? That's a ton of gold that you're putting on the inside that no one's ever going to see. Why do you need to have gold on the outside and the inside? And our sages explained that when it comes to the Aron, there was something on the inside. There was something held in this box, contained in this box, and what was held in there was the luchot, the tablets, both the old ones that were shattered and the new ones that were intact. The second set of tablets. This is their home in here. And what our sages explain is that why does the outside and the inside have to be gold? Because something that's housing Torah needs to be internally and externally consistent. One cannot be a hypocrite. One cannot show gold on the outside, but be just wood on the inside. If someone wants to be a vessel to have Torah, someone wants to teach Torah, someone wants to be a representative of Hashem and do a Kiddush Hashem, their inside needs to be the same with the outside. It quotes us, our Chot Tzadikim, it says very nicely, let's say someone is in the Kanisa, and he's praying in the Kanisa, and he's moving, and he's shaking, and he's closing his eyes, and he's praying. But then when no one is watching, let's say, for example, he's not in Kanisa once, and he's praying in a private room, and then he's not focused. So Rabbi Chaim loves quoting this, that who are you really serving? You're not serving Hashem. You're not praying to Hashem. You're serving the people who are around you. You're serving the people who are watching you. That's not the service of God. It's a service of people. That's like Avodah Zarah. You're praying to the people. You're not praying to God. So when someone is on the inside, it has to be equivalently covered with gold on the inside and the outside, because we need to be consistent and not to be a hypocrite. So this is the Aron. And the next thing, let me go through very quickly. I'm going to share the screen again here. I hope you could see this now. This is called a shulchan. This is a shulchan. It was they call it the golden table of the showbread. You could see there are 12 rungs here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 and 2 columns of 6. That's 12. Every week they would put 12 loaves of bread in there. And those 12 loaves of bread would last from week to week. The Kohanim that are doing the service, the Kohanim would do service, and there were like different shifts of Kohen families that would do weekly services. So they would come in on a Friday and they would leave next Friday. And then the next set of Kohanim would come in on Friday and leave next Friday. So the Kohanim who just did the service that week would then get this bread. Our sages explained to us that this bread was made in a very specific way. It was done by the Kohanim, and they would keep their secret. They wouldn't tell people how they made it, because they would be folded in a certain way with horns and different shape. Very, very cool. Also, our sages explained that it would remain fresh. It would remain fresh even though it lasted a whole week. It's pretty amazing. This is the mitzvah of the showbread. The shulchan rather. The next one is, let's look at the menorah. So this, by the way, I'll explain what I'm using. This is all from the website of the Temple Institute, the Machon HaMikdash. I'm just using this. Yeah, this is like, it's not a copyright infringement here. I'm giving credit to where some. It's just from templeinstitute.org. I'll explain what the organization is very briefly soon, but let me just go through this. This is called the menorah. This, we are very familiar with what the menorah looks like because of the holiday of Hanukkah. And Hanukkah, what happened was when they went back to the Beit HaMikdash and they lit the menorah. So to commemorate it, we light the menorah. But big difference between this and the Chanukiah, the candelabra that we light in the holiday of the Hanukkah, is that ours has 8 candles plus a shamash. So it's like 9. It's really 8 plus 1. Here there are 7 stems. 3 on the left, 3 on the right, and 1 in the center stem. And this is what it would be like in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Mishkan, completely made out of gold. Although you could see here they made a replica. The Temple Institute, all of these things, but the Temple Institute made a replica of the menorah. I'm pretty sure on the inside there's some sort of a metal frame. It would be quite impossible for this to be entirely gold nowadays, because gold is very malleable. So I'm pretty sure there's a metal frame in there. There is. I've seen the metal frame at the Temple Institute. They actually show their metal frame. Okay, and then let's see, is there anything else? You can see here is that, yeah. So this is the Temple Institute's website. They have a gallery. Just to speak a word about them, there's a Machon HaMikdash. You could go to the website called templeinstitute.org if you're interested. They're an organization that's an educational organization. They are building the kelim. They are preparing for it. They are building replicas that they are saying is ready to be used for the Beit HaMikdash. It should be so we'll be ready to go. Oh, this is one more that I wanted to show. Let me share my screen for this one. This is another thing that we talked about. We're going to speak more about this in the future also. This is called the Mizbeach HaKetoret. Mizbeach HaKetoret, the golden altar. So this altar was in the same room that the menorah and the shulchan were in, where the table with the showbread, the breads for the kohanim, as well as the menorah. It's all in the room called the Kodesh. The 3 items that are in there, you could even see in this picture here, you see on the left, they have like, you could see one of the stems of the menorah, because it's in the same room. It's this menorah. You could see this one is about waist height. There are 2 altars. One of them has a ramp because it's very tall. You have to get up there for animal offerings. This one is meant for spice offerings, and it's actually waist height. You could see in this picture, this depiction where they have the Kohen Gadol, it's like below his height. This one was meant for spices. This was in the same room. So in the room of the Kodesh, you had 3 things. It was this Mizbeach HaKetoret, the golden altar, used for spices, the menorah, which that they would light the candles on, the shulchan, which is where they would have the showbread, which I showed that before. And then after this room, there is a partition, and there's another room called the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies. And in there was the Aron, the ark, which was the box that was covered with gold inside and outside. And in it was a few things, including the tablets, both the broken tablets, the shattered tablets, and the new tablets that were intact. So this is this week's parasha. There's so much to discuss about these parashiyot, but for the most part, this is something that was going to be repeated in the Beit HaMikdash also. All of this was for the Mishkan, the temporary tabernacle that we had in the desert, and we had for many years in the land of Israel. It was moving around with us. We had a Mishkan Shiloh. In Shiloh we had Givon. We had it in a couple of places. That ultimately found the final abode in Yerushalayim. The Beit HaMikdash was rebuilt. Many of these vessels had different dimensions, so they would have different ones. But this organization, this Temple Institute, which I would encourage you to check out their website just to see what they do, you can see how they have built many of these items according to halakha, that they could be used today. Be'ezrat Hashem, for the Beit HaMikdash, it should be rebuilt. Okay, I'll pause here and I'll open it up for questions. Okay, so question. Why do the Keruvim have faces? Right? Considering we don't have statues of faces lying around, why do we have Keruvim? Why do they have faces? Excellent question. The question is, we don't have statues, so why is it that there's the faces of children in there? You're asking an excellent question, and in fact, I'd like to just make it a little bit broader. Someone asked me this question: how he looks in the pictures, how the curtains have a depiction of a lion, and there's different birds, and there's all of these different decorations, and it's like, well, why do we have these? Okay, so it's an excellent question. The simple answer is because the Torah said so, right? So without having to dig too deep, it's a very valid point that we are not supposed to have statues. But here the Torah tells us to make the Keruvim. So we're not smarter than God. When God is telling us to build the ark, and he's telling you on them, I want you to have Keruvim, and they should have wings, and the wings should be leaning over. So we follow the instructions. Now, second level, you could try to understand as to why. So our sages explain that almost miraculously, the faces of these angels and the directions of their faces would change based on how we were acting. So they would teach us that if we were going according to the will of Hashem, the two Keruvim would face one another, and they would embrace, and they would be like happy almost. But when Am Yisrael was not serving, their faces would turn away from one another. So to answer your question of like, why do we have faces on these Keruvim, the answer is because that was the instruction that we received. We don't have to think too deeply about it. Hashem told us to do it. We have to do it. Philosophically, why would God ask us to do this? Well, there's one thing that's also important to know about the Kodesh HaKodashim, the room that the ark was in. No one would enter. It would have once a year, by one person, the Kohen Gadol would enter to do a service, and you have someone in the Kohen Gadol that is a worthy person and that would not ever be suspected of serving this as idol worship, and it's something that was required, and not just required, but it will also be as a source of inspiration to teach the Jewish people. Like right now, they're not facing each other miraculously, and when they weren't facing each other, that would be a source of inspiration. People would say, okay, we need to improve our ways. Did it work? I mean, it didn't always work, right? Because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash anymore, and Am Yisrael in the past has done things that was improper, but it was used as a way to give musar and rebuke to Am Yisrael to improve their ways. Another thing that I want to mention, though, is that what about on the curtains? There is images of animals on the curtains. So one thing that the Gemara speaks about is that, typically speaking, we have a concern of creating images when it's 3D, which really means like a statue. So you're correct that creating these items under normal circumstances would be a problem, not for the fact that the Torah told us to make the Keruvim, but to make embroidered items in a curtain is not a problem, even though it's an image of an animal, even though it's an image of a person. In fact, the animals, Halakha tells us you could even have a 3D image, or you could even have a statue of it. But it's human beings that there's a halakha that tells us, Lo ta'asun iti, don't make statues. Even in one's home, a person should not have a statue of a human being. So absolutely is a very valid question. But in the Hechal, in the Kodesh HaKodashim, Hashem asks us to do it, and there's a reason behind it. And one of the things that our sages teach us is that it was used as a way of giving us inspiration to act better. Any other questions? Okay, with that, we'll stop here. I'll just mention one thing that we'll speak about hopefully next week. This week is Parashat Zachor. I'm pretty sure it is. Yes, it is, because next week is going to be Purim. So this week is Parashat Zachor. Parashat Zachor, we have a mitzvah. We have a special maftir that we're reading this week. So we read the regular Parashat Tetzaveh, and then the maftir, it will be reading the end of Parashat Ki Tetzeh, which is a 3-line recap of the story of Amalek that attacked Am Yisrael in the desert. It's a very important part to listen to, according to Shulchan Aruch, according to our sages. It's a mitzvah to hear it this week. So I encourage everyone, if you can, to go to Bet Knesset this week to hear Parashat Zachor, to get us ready and excited for the holiday of Purim, which is coming up the following week. We'll speak next Sunday and we'll give a recap of what Parashat Zachor is about and prep ourselves for Purim. But it's important to know that this is the week before. I want to encourage everyone, if you can go to Bet Knesset, go to Knesset this week. It's really very important. It's a tremendous mitzvah to hear Parashat Zachor from the Torah scroll if you can. Be'ezrat Hashem, I hope everyone has a great week ahead. See you next week in good health. Shavua Tov, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you.